Despicable Me 4 holds the top spot at the past weekend's box office, but there was a surprising number 2. I'm Adam, this is Does It Hold Up, and every Tuesday we talk about what were the top 10 movies over the weekend at the domestic box office, so let's go ahead and do it again. As I already stated, the number 1 movie for the weekend was Despicable Me 4 in its second week with another $43.6 million, which is good. I mean, it only fell 42%. That's a really good hold for any movie. It's just really surprising for this movie. I checked this movie out over the weekend and whoo boy, it was something. It was definitely a movie and I watched it. Yeah. So far, this movie has brought in a very impressive $210 million here domestically in just 2 weeks. The only movie that even came close to doing something like that this year was Inside Out 2, which made more than that in its first 2 weeks. But man, it is the summer of family-friendly animation. But the second movie on our list was the surprising one. It is the new horror movie. I guess you could call it a horror movie. It's like a mystery horror called Longlegs. It brought in $22.4 million over the weekend in its first weekend in theaters. And this is rather surprising. This was put out by a company called Neon, who usually puts out real small, low-budget movies. They play for a little bit, make just a tiny bit of money, but then they kind of get lost to the annals of time. This one, on the other hand, super big surprise. Nic Cage is apparently fantastic in this movie, and it's what drew people to theaters. There's a lot of buzz around his performance, and that buzz is really paying off for this movie. It's great to see something like this show up big at the box office. We don't always have to rely on sequels, prequels, big budget films. Every now and then, if just a good movie gets a little word of mouth, this is what it can do. So, big round of applause for Longlegs, but now the question is, will it have long legs going forward? Is it going to fall out of the top 10 very fast, or can it hang on for just a little bit of time? In third place is Inside Out 2 in its fifth week, bringing in another $20 million, a 34% drop, and this movie has made $571.8 million so far, just domestically. In fourth place is A Quiet Place Day 1 in its third week with another $11.3 million, 45% drop, $115.8 million here domestically, so it's doing all right. In fifth place is another new movie here to the chart. It's called Fly Me to the Moon. It brought in $9.4 million in its first weekend. And we have a review for it right here on the channel. When this video is done, go check that out. It was actually a pretty good movie. In sixth place is Bad Boys Ride or Die in its sixth week with another $4.2 million. It's at $184 million overall. In seventh place is Horizon American Saga Chapter 1 in its third week with just $2.2 million. Another big drop of 58%. And it's made a very disappointing $26.8 million at the theaters. In eighth place is Maxine, or Max XX Ein, in its second week with another $2 million, but a very big drop for this movie, a 69% fall. It's only brought in $11.7 million overall. 69% is usually what we see for movies that opened up spectacularly big. They opened up to 60, 70, 80 million. Then we're going to see them fall drastically in that second weekend. This movie only opened up to like 8 or 9 million. Even a little less. And somehow it still fell that much. I haven't seen it yet. I did, for the first time, check out Pearl not that long ago. Was not impressed by that movie. So if this is the whole trilogy, the trilogy ender, yeah, I'm not really that excited for it, and apparently no one else was for it either. In ninth place is Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot, with another $1.3 million, a 56% drop in its second weekend. It's just under $10 million. And in 10th place, it says new to the list, but you guys know that it's not actually new to the list because this movie came out all the way back in 1994. It's The Lion King. They're doing a special re-release of it because Mufasa, the Lion King, or whatever the name of that movie is, the live-action Mufasa movie, is coming out later this year, so they're just trying to generate some buzz and maybe make a little extra money for a movie that probably didn't need it. When it came out all the way back in 1994, it made $421 million. 3 movies fell out of the top 10 this past weekend. After 2 weeks, it's Kalki 2848 AD, The Bike Riders after 3 weeks, and The Fall Guy, although it's listed here as only 1 week, that's true this time, but was in the top 10 before, fell out, and then came back for 1 week, and now just fell out again. So that's a crazy looking top 10 this past weekend. It's like I said already, it's really nice to see Longlegs do extremely well in its opening weekend. I hope it can hold this buzz and kind of use it to build some good momentum and walk away with a pretty solid box office. The 2 movies that surround it though, Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2, what are you going to do? Sequels of beloved franchises that people are just going to see. Whether or not they're good doesn't really matter. They went and saw them anyway. Meh, whatever. The next thing we do here on the show is take a look at the comparison between 2023 and 2024, because to know if we're doing well, we need to know where we have been. So this next chart takes a look at each weekend on its own and compares last year to this year. We are in the 28th weekend of 2024, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Last year, on the 28th weekend of 2023, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning opened up in theaters to a lot lower than anybody predicted. It was sort of a failure for them in the first weekend. It did leg out a little bit money, but not too much. It led the way with all movies grossing $140.1 million for that weekend. Here in 2024, you can see that we've actually dropped after 4 solid weeks of being above last year. We've once again dropped below it with nothing major opening this weekend. And even though Longlegs did really well, it wasn't a huge release. So the second weekend of Despicable Me 4 led the way with $118.7 million total box office here domestically, which was a really big drop, almost $40 million from the previous week. That's not a hold that we like to see, but once again, the fact is we didn't have any major studio releases hitting theaters other than, I guess, Fly Me to the Moon, but that movie was also flying under the radar, and nobody was really talking about it, looking forward to it, or in many cases, even knew it existed. So maybe next week, we're going to see a little bit of a bounce back, but also, let's be honest, we're not going to, because the 29th weekend of the year was the Barbie Oppenheimer phenomenon of 2023. We have nothing that can compete with that. Barbie itself opened up to over $160 million, leading the way to over $300 million for all movies at the theater that weekend. What do we have that's going to compete with that? Oh, right. Nothing. Oh, well. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the overall top 10 for 2024. This is all movies that came out and as much money as they've made since January 1st of this year. And there's a little bit of movement on this chart this week. Not a ton, but something maybe a little surprising. Inside Out 2 is still in first place with the $571.8 million. Doom Part 2 hangs around in second place, and will it stay there much longer? I don't know if it'll get bumped down next week, but it might get bumped down the week after, depending on if this movie, Despicable Me 4, can continue to make money, because it moves up 4 spots into third place with $210 million. In fourth place is Godzilla Kong with $196.3 million, dropping 1 spot. Also dropping 1 spot was Kung Fu Panda 4, down to 5th with $193.6 million. Bad Boys Ride or Die jumped into 5th place last week, but immediately falls back out to 6th place with $184 million. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes also drops 1 spot here to 7th with $170.3 million. And here's a little bit of a surprise. In 8th place, new to this chart, is A Quiet Place Day 1. It has quietly been making pretty solid numbers week to week here at the box office. Even though it's never really impressing that much over the weekend, it makes steady numbers throughout the entire week, which allowed it to make $115.7 million overall at the domestic box office, giving it that good spot here in 8th place. Do I think it's going to catch Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? No, probably not, but you're a top 10 movie right now. Nobody saw that coming when this movie was first announced. In 9th place is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, dropping one spot with $113.3 million. Also dropping one spot is If, down to 10th with $111 million. One movie dropped out of the top 10 this weekend, and it was, finally, Bob Marley, One Love. Alright, this is the part of the show where we take a look back at a movie from the past to see how well it did in theaters. Did it make money? Did it lose money? Was it loved? Just get a feel for old numbers. It's great to look at what's currently in theaters, but like I said earlier, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. So we always like to flash back here at the end of the show to take a look at an old movie. And in honor of Fly Me to the Moon, a movie all about if the moon landing was faked or not, just a space movie, we're going to go ahead and take a look at Apollo 13, which came out June 30th, 1995, and see how well it did at the box office. In the domestic week 1, Apollo 13 made $46 million. Studios kept 60% of that, so $27 million. Week 2, the movie made $29.3 million. Studios kept 16 of that. Domestic week 3, it made $98.5 million. The 50% that studios kept made $49.2 million for their pockets. Internationally, the movie did pretty well, $162 million. The studios kept 40%, which was $64.8 million. It didn't get a release in China, which is actually not that surprising in 1995, and especially for a movie like this one. The budget for the movie was $65 million. Marketing, this number was extremely hard to find, as most marketing numbers are. Studios don't really like to just announce how much they spent like that, but I found a few articles saying a couple different numbers, so I took an amalgamation of that, and it was somewhere around $45 million, give or take a little bit. If you said it was $50 to $55 million, I totally believe you too. If you said it was only 30, that might be a little low. I'd probably still believe you, but probably not. The movie grossed $335.8 million worldwide. Once the theaters take their cut of that $335 million gross, the studio got to keep $157.7 million. So if you take that number, you minus the budget, you minus the marketing, you'll see that Apollo 13, all the way back in 1995, made an estimated profit of $47,760,275. For a movie that's beloved like this one, that was nominated for so many awards, that people still quote to this day, they still love this movie to this day, it's a little surprising to see how little money it made. I thought this was a huge box office success. Like, it just made all the money, especially when you take a look back and you realize that it was the number one movie in domestic theaters for 4 weeks straight. And then to know it only made about $47 million profit, still good. You definitely want to make a profit in theaters, and I'm sure this movie did a ton of money on home video, and the studio's not mad, even with that $47 million. But it seems like maybe it should have been a little bit more. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That's it for the show this week. Wrapping up the box office for the 28th weekend of 2024. Again, let me know in the comments anything you thought about the show. Is there anything you don't like about the show? Anything new you want to see on the show? Is there a movie you want to see me flash back to? Let me know down below. I'll be back again next week with another box office roundup, and later this week with a new movie review. So make sure you subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff so you never miss a video that we release. Until I see you next time, just remember to be good to yourself, be kind to others, and as always, keep watching movies.